All right. Welcome to the Strong Side podcast. My name is Mitchell Black, and I'm your host. And today we have a new guest and a special guest and a really interesting topic that we have never covered before. We have one of our members, Dr. Andrew St. Bernard. He's a chiropractor. He's going to be talking about how to align your body, take care of your body, talk about different exercises, getting your body in tune. And before we get rolling, hey, look, I know you're on your phone right now. All you got to do, scroll down on this Apple podcast and give us a little 5-star. And in fact, if you give us a 5-star review on any platform in the month of August, on Apple, YouTube, Facebook, I don't care, whatever, and you come in, you show it to a coach, we're going to hook you up with a free snack. Okay.
What?
Yeah. So
Awesome.
we're going to give you like a protein bar or a drink, whatever you want. But other than that, I got to grab my notepad for those of you guys watching live. With no further ado, Mr. Andrew St. Bernard.
Thank you so much, Mitchell, and I really appreciate you taking me on the podcast here. It's really great to be able to share my testimony, to share my story, and share what I do. You know, I love what I do. I think it goes without saying. A lot of the people who already know me know that I'm really passionate about chiropractic and really passionate about people and helping them be their best selves. I think that's where you and I kind of connect, because Strong Side is all about making people better too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The whole be your best self, you versus you. So before we even get rolling into what we were talking about in pre-show here fired me up. I mean, It was really good information. But so, okay, what is chiropractics other than you just got to snap my neck?
That's such a good question. And it's really confusing to a lot of people because chiropractic is one of the only industries that I can think of where there's so many different across the board. Depending on what chiropractor you go to, you're going to have a way different experience. Some chiropractors just do strictly musculoskeletal work, and so they do more physical therapy. Some chiropractors are what they call the straight chiropractors that just focus on maybe like the upper cervical area of the spine. They don't touch anything else. So if you're somebody who's used to maybe getting your low back popped, quote unquote, and you go to a doctor that doesn't do that and does only your neck, you're going to be like, what the heck, dude? This is not what I experienced before. So I think it's really confusing to the lay in the public about what chiropractic is. So I'll break it down the way I practice specifically, because I think we've come up with, and I'm a bit biased by this, obviously, because this is how I choose to practice. But I think we've come up with what works best for people who are the go-getters, the people who come to StrongSide, the people who come to gyms like StrongSide, or very want to compete in different events like Spartan races and just performing at their very best, their peak level of performance. And so what I find is that the way that works best is we start with a proper evaluation and an exam. What I'm focusing on as a chiropractor is, what does your alignment look like? Your spinal alignment is so key, because when you go to do, say, a lift or a squat or I won't name names, but specific movements, if you think that your form is right, but you still have difficulty with it, that's a big red flag. Like if you're going for a squat and you think, hey, I've done everything my coaches have told me to do, but my back still hurts, or I still have this leg pain, or I still have XYZ, you name it. There's probably a good chance that you have an underlying alignment problem that's affecting your body and the way it moves. And so my theory is better to have that evaluated before it becomes a problem, because if it becomes a problem, then we're trying to play catch up. We're trying to work backwards. You asked me this before pre-show. You said, well, what kind of people come to see a chiropractor? And usually they're motivated by a pain problem, which isn't a bad thing, because pain's a really good motivator. You know, when you're in pain, you're ready to get out of pain, and especially if it's limiting your ability to do things in your life. But pain is a very end point problem. There's always an issue that's been there before, like a pre-existing condition that's led to that issue. Unless, of course, you've had an injury. Like if you just got in a car accident, for example, that's a pretty definite cause or a start point to a person's problem, because it really jostles the spine, puts you in a bad way, and then you got an inflammatory problem. Or if you're lifting an insane amount of weight that you're not prepared for and your back goes out under that kind of pressure. Those kind of things, I get it. But the majority of people I see are the people who say, I woke up this way, I'm in pain and I don't know why. I bent over the wrong way, I just went to tie my shoes and my back popped, and then now it's hurting and I can't move. These are the situations that we call the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
If you've heard of that before, that saying is basically saying you were in a bad way before you even knew, and it didn't take much to push you over the edge. So that's sort of what we see in the practice. And the more people learn that their spine has an influence on their whole health, the better off they're going to be at getting their health together overall. because the spine is designed to protect one vital organ, and that is the nervous system. Now, your brain is encased in bone. The brain is covered by the skull. The skull has very small sutures tight sutures that don't really allow for much movement. But the spine is designed to allow you to have the freedom of movement and to protect the spinal cord, which is extremely delicate. So let's just say, for example, your spine is bent out of shape. How would you know about it? Most people would say because it hurts. Well, like I said, a lot of these problems, the spinal alignment issues, can happen before the pain happens. So how would you know? Well, some people who are trained to look at posture or know, and some of my patients will tell me, oh, I know my posture is bad. Well, how do you know it's bad? Because I slouch, or my shoulders are rolled forward, or my head is tucked down, or somebody else pointed it out to them or something.
Yeah.
That's really about it. But you'd have no idea how the muscles are interacting along the spine. You have no idea if the nerves are being pinched or irritated, because sometimes nerves can be pinched or irritated and you don't feel a thing. But if you have a pinched nerve and you know about it, then you're going to have a radiating pain, like a numbness or tingling in the hands or feet. That's an extreme form of nerve pressure. But you might have pressure on nerves that don't communicate pain at all, like the nerves that go to your lungs. Maybe you have difficulty breathing, and that's something that you just said, oh, I'll just get used to that. Maybe you have digestive issues, and you said, oh, I just have IBS. The doctor said I have IBS, so I'm just going to learn to live with it and deal with it.
So the idea is that, like, if I get adjusted, that it takes pressure off my nervous system and that can start relaxing.
Exactly, yes. So the first step is to know, what does your alignment look like? Is it good or is it poor? So with my office and all the corrective chiropractic offices, we're the only ones in the nation that do something called a performance score. So we're going to do an exam, and then we're going to put it through our system to show you whether it's normal or not, and it comes up with a letter grade. So it'll tell you actually how well you're doing physiologically speaking. It checks out your BMI, it checks out your alignment, muscle spasm, nerve components, and x-ray analysis. So when I take a set of x-rays on my patients, it's not just because everybody get x-rays. It's because I see something on my precursor tests that tell me x-rays are needed. And then when I do take x-rays, I measure everything properly so I can give you an output of, where you stand as far as what's normal and what's not.
And you're measuring like the distance between vertebrae or like the degree of flexion or something like that.
Right. And something that a lot of people are familiar with is scoliosis. So scoliosis is an abnormal curve where your spine is supposed to be straight from the front. If it's curving one way or the other like this and doing kind of an S shape, that's called a scoliosis if it's bad enough. Some people have curves in their spine that's less than a scoliosis by definition, but still not good on their body. And that's where we come in, because I can look at that and say, this is what we realistically can do to restore that positioning of the spine, put you in your best state possible, and then that way you can go out and do the things you want to do at a high level.
That's pretty powerful and pretty cool. You have a real neat story of how you even got there. Like, I know like we're going all the way back to the beginning now, but you said that you were much smaller than you used to be, and it was a neat story how one day you kind of fell into chiropractic.
Yeah, so Mitchell and I actually have a very similar story, you guys, because I know that Mitchell had issues with his weight when he was younger, and that motivated him to get into fitness. I was actually similarly motivated to get into fitness too, but that was because in middle school I was bullied relentlessly. I just picked on, and I had very low self-esteem and low confidence, and I said, I wanted to get into fitness because even though I wasn't really coordinated to play sports at the time, I said, I just want to get as big as humanly possible so nobody messes with me.
That's
and that was my mentality at the time. So at 14, 15 years old, I was lifting weights and just trying to get as big and meatheady as I could be. So by the time I was 18, though, I was doing some pretty heavy squats. And at that time, I threw out my back. I hurt my back during that time. And I hurt my back multiple times, not just squatting, but trying to work to save for my first car. I was working in a warehouse, lifting inappropriately and improperly. Nobody had told me how to lift properly. Nobody had told me that alignment even mattered. But it wasn't until I injured myself that I couldn't walk. Then I was in a bad way and I had to do something about it. So I started seeing a chiropractor because, I saw a spine on their window and looks like they fix back.
You were like, that's me. Help.
Yeah. I mean, they're specialists with the spine, so they must be able to fix my back that's broken. And it was pretty amazing, my experience. I actually really lucked out because, like I said, there's so many different chiropractors, there's so many different experiences. But the one that I got, I resonated with really strongly. And she said, I see what the problem is. She did a proper x-ray on me. She did her workup and her analysis, just kind of similar to what I do now, only I've taken it a step further in my practice. And she just said, honestly, I think we're going to be able to help you with this. And I was like, really? And I looked at her in the eye and she says, no, I know we're going to be able to help you, because I see what the problems are and the underlying issues. So for me, that was like a lifesaver. Like if you've ever been in a really bad way with your health and a doctor tells you it's going to be okay, I got this, that's the most powerful, reassuring thing ever. Like I felt like I was on cloud nine. I'll never forget that. It was life-changing. And when I went through her plan and her program, and she was able to get me back not only to where I was before, but lifting heavier and not worried about my back anymore, it was incredible. It was such an amazing experience. She said to me one day, she said, you know what? Every time we talk about chiropractic, you seem fired up. I'm like, I'm totally fired up about this because it helped me. It saved my life. And she says, you know, have you ever thought about being a chiropractor yourself? I was like, no, but now that you mention it.
Yeah.
So she planted a seed, and that seed obviously took off, and I'm here where I am today because of that experience.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. So, well, it just kind of clicked that, yeah, you would have gone and seen her at 18, which is like when you're thinking about college and like all that stuff and like what path you're going to, that did line up.
You lined up perfectly. Yeah. And so now I'm 40 years old, and
you're 40?
Yes, sir.
Not that that's old, but you look like 25.
So,
you look younger than me.
And I get that a lot, actually, which is really cool because it's a testament to the fact that I've been taking care of my body, you know? And when you take care of your
wrinkles.
body, I just got a wrinkle here, and I laughed. It's all good, but yeah, man, I just love what I do. I love helping other people achieve their very best and be the best version of themselves. You know, so if you're listening to this podcast and you've never been to a chiropractor, at least not one like the one, I'm not telling you to come see me necessarily, but get your spine evaluated, get a good look at what it looks like. You know, get pictures of your spine. If you've never seen what it looks like, you just don't know exactly. You're playing a guessing game. And when you never want to guess about your health, because like I said, if you have an issue that surfaces that could have been prevented, then you're going to be asking yourself, why didn't I do this earlier? And one of the things I definitely don't wish on anybody, or even for myself, is regret. You know, we never want to be in a position later on in life saying, I could have done this and that differently, but I just didn't for whatever reason.
Yeah, one thing we were talking about a couple minutes ago before the show was that like there's a lot of fear associated with exercise. And I know certain types of exercise, you know, might have a higher injury rate than others. I get that. But most people, they're always like, oh, I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to get hurt. Like they said, over and over and over again. And first off, like on a global scale, the injury rate for exercise is extremely low. It doesn't mean people don't get hurt, but it's not. Right. I know at StrongSide that we don't teach classes and then at the end of the day go, woo, nobody got hurt today. That was fantastic. Like, it's not that dangerous. You get what I'm saying? But what you're saying, all these precursor things, like what are people like looking for when you see and when they come into it? And you talked about doing things like, you know, if you jump right into exercises that are really fast with no setup and you're getting really out of breath, you're doing really winded, and then, you know, all of a sudden, oh man, this hurts.
Right. So a lot of people will focus on form, and it's a lot easier to focus on your form when you're going at a slow to moderate pace. When you start to pick up the pace and you're moving a lot faster and you're requiring your body to do a lot more for you, that's an elite skill in movement. And you're running a fine line of injury at that point unless you know exactly what your health looks like. So, for example, I'll see people that have come in to see me because of an issue that they've hurt their back. Usually most of the time when people come to see me, it's because of a pain problem. And that's because pain's a very powerful motivator. Rarely do I see someone who's like, hey, I feel perfectly fine, but I'm ready to see a chiropractor.
Yeah.
It does happen sometimes because people become educated about the performance aspects of chiropractic and how it helps them get to the next level. But most people are motivated by pain, and I get that. That's fine. When people come to see me, though, it's interesting to hear their stories because they'll say things like, I just bent over a certain way, or I don't know what I did, and my back is hurting a whole lot now. And we realize that it's because they had an issue with their spine that went uncorrected for a long period of time. And I only realized this with my exam because there's aspects of your spine that decay, but they take a long time to decay. And for some people, that decay happens over a short period of time. For example, I've seen 20-year-olds with spines that look like they're 40 or 50. But I've seen 70 or 80-year-olds with spines that look like people in their 40s or 30s. So age is not necessarily a predictor of decay in the spine as much as alignment is. If your alignment's poor, you can pretty much bet at some point in time in the future and quite possibly in the near future, that's going to produce a problem. So now you take that situation, you put someone into a new program where they have no idea if they're in fit enough condition to go really hard and really fast, and then they get their ego about them and they push themselves really hard and they get injured. So it's not because the program or the exercise injured that person. It's because they were not adequately prepared for that movement, and they just didn't know.
With the spine alignment thing, so if I have my spine aligned, will it, for lack of a better term, like age slower? Like that person who's 70, if they, let's just pretend they took care of their spine better, it's not going to look 70.
So this is a really good question you asked, because I get this a lot, especially when it comes to degenerative arthritis. There are certain conditions, unfortunately, where people have like autoimmune disease, like rheumatoid arthritis or non-rheumatoid arthritis. The one I'm talking about specifically is osteoarthritis. That's the one that they associate with aging. They say it's because you're getting older. That one is the preventable kind with alignment. And I'll just use a very simple example for everybody who's listening to the podcast. If you take a dumbbell and you hold that dumbbell close to your heart, do you think you could hold it there shorter or longer than if you hold the dumbbell out here? The person who's going to win that match, at least, if we go toe to toe, and that has nothing to do with muscular strength, I guarantee you the person that has the 5-pound dumbbell here is going to fail before the one here. So what I'm trying to describe to you is that your body should displace its weight evenly. And if your head is sticking forward like this, the research shows that every inch that your head travels forward, it doubles in its effective load. I'll say that again. When your head shifts forward 1 inch, or even millimeters, because I measure everything in millimeters and degrees, that forward head shift has an exponential weight increase load on the spine. So now if you take and you couple a spine that's not in its adequate position, not in its optimal alignment, and you put a load on it, like with a dumbbell or barbell, and the person that's training you has you stand in perfect form, is that perfect form going to fix the underlying alignment problem? It can't, because I can't physically draw my head back like this and fix the alignment issue in my neck, at least not to the degree that it would be necessary to avoid that type of problem.
Yeah, because if you didn't get adjusted, I'm just thinking like the anatomy, like your sternum clastomastoid, like these big muscles on the front of your neck, like the amount of stretching that you would have to do to like lengthen that and then tighten up like your traps and like all these muscles to pull it back. Like if that was the answer, that would take months and years and
when you may not even be able to achieve it at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
There's some people whose muscles are so tight. I had a lady come in to see me the other day, radiating pain, arm pain down the arm. And we determined her scalene muscles, deep muscles of the neck. They're called the deep neck flexors, right down in here. So if you touch in here, some of you guys can even feel on your own bodies. If you touch in here in this, where you said the SCM, the sternocleidomastoid, so that's the muscle that pops up when you turn your head. Well, and which way do I turn? This muscle right here, okay? So underneath that, if you kind of push that
right by your
and go
esophagus.
down, just beside it but not on it, that's your deep neck flexors, and they attach to the front of the spine and go down to your first rib. When those muscles get tight like that, it's because you had this forward head shift for so long. Same reason why people have very tight hamstrings who work desk jobs. Yeah. Because they're sitting, and in that sitting posture, it shortens the hamstring muscles. So there could be muscles that are tight on your body that you think, oh, I'll just go to a massage therapist, get them to work it out. Well, why are those muscles tight? Because if you're telling me you go to a massage therapist on a regular basis and that tight muscle never fully resolves, there's an underlying cause for that too.
Yeah, just thinking about that, like to piggyback on what you're saying is like, if we did use those muscles, or like I said, if you stretch these out and tighten those other ones, that's also kind of assuming that that your brain is even talking to those muscles. Exactly. Because if your spine is too tight, if the nervous system is compressed, you might think you're doing all these lat pull downs, but your body's not even engaging the lats.
Exactly.
I was listening to this guy. He trains all these professional bodybuilders. He trained I can't remember their names now, but all the Mr. Olympia guys. Right. And he was talking about how these bodybuilders and power lifters that forget, we're not talking about 135-pound back squat. We're not talking about 225, none of that. The people that are squatting 700-800 pounds, right, literally, for years and years and years, that they actually see deterioration of the triceps. Yep. Because the brain, from being compressed under a barbell so much, can't send signals to the triceps and traps to work. And his whole point was using like a belt squat machine as an example to still work the legs without compressing the spine so much. And again, we're not talking about a 200-pound back squat. We're talking about an 800-pound back squat. So I don't know if you want to talk about that for a second, but then also the benefits of Well, yeah, you should probably squat like that.
Right.
Well, do you talk about the osteoporosis and stuff like that?
Osteoarthritis, yeah. So yeah, it's a really good point that you brought up, and I think some of y'all might know the documentary that was done on Netflix about Ronnie Coleman, because it has pictures, and I almost cried when I saw the pictures of his spine and how bad they got. This was a bodybuilder, for those of you who don't know, who lifted heavy. He lifted like a power lifter to put on bodybuilding weight, and what he failed to realize is that he never needed to lift that heavy to be an Olympian.
Yeah.
He needed to train specifically, and he needed to address the underlying alignment problems that he had with his spine too. Now, I get it. People will tell me, he did see a chiropractor. He was getting adjusted. But I would argue, and I don't know exactly his regimen, but I would be willing to argue and bet that his regimen wasn't quite a corrective one, but more symptom relief. If you're just getting symptom relief adjustments, they're not doing anything for alignment or for corrective purposes.
What's the difference?
So the difference is having very specific care based on your needs. That's why I said the very first thing you want to do is get an exam done that pinpoints your specific problems. Rather than just racking and cracking your spine and pushing anywhere that'll pop on your back, I'm actually looking at the spots that need it the most and leaving the other good ones alone. So I'm only working very specifically on my patient's needs instead of just trying to pop everything, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what kind of care Ronnie Coleman got, but that's an example of a bodybuilder that way overdid it. So to your point, a lot of these powerlifters that don't take good care of their spine and their bodies show a lot of extra deterioration.
And he's in a wheelchair now.
He's gone that route. Yeah. He started in walkers with his arms, but it's a deterioration. And when you get to a point where there's no return. So you never want to do that kind of damage to your spine. You want to maintain it as long as possible, because if it deteriorates to that point, it's almost like going off a cliff. It's going to continue and continue at a very rapid rate. Very hard to backpedal at that point.
So I don't know that much. I just know the surface level. But like, if you could generally say, like, let's compare it. If nobody knows who Ronnie Coleman is, they know his voice. Ronnie Coleman is the,
lightweight.
Yeah.
Lightweight, baby.
That guy. And so that's one. And he was on the SWAT team. He was like,
he was badass.
Gangster. And then you had somebody like an Arnold.
Yep.
And Arnold's 70-something years old, still lifting and doing all this stuff. But Arnold took a very methodical approach. It like just everything was like artwork.
Yes.
And I'm not saying he was weak, but you hear him talk about training, and it was so much like sculpting and attention. And if you compare those two training programs, like, what do you think the overall effect is? That's a
good question, and I think that you're absolutely right. The training programs had played a big influence. Other things that we don't know about that I can only speculate on is perhaps Arnold's alignment was already pretty good, or maybe he did have the right chiropractor taking care of him too. You just don't know. That's the big question. If you don't know what your own spinal alignment looks like, you don't know what your body's going to be able to withstand. It could be that Arnold had great care, or he had a great alignment with his body that he could tolerate lifting heavy. And it also could be that he didn't lift like a crazy madman and put unnecessary loads on his back to try and build muscle mass.
Yeah, that goes into, like, I had a question before. So I usually get this two ways, and I'll have somebody come in, and maybe they've been here for years and it just shows up as like a day issue, or somebody will come in and maybe it's their first day, but they'll say something like, hey, when I do this movement, whatever the movement is, it hurts this part of my body.
Right.
And then they'll say, well, so today I'm just going to go light, which my immediate answer is no, you're actually not going to do that movement at all today, because you're just not lifting enough to mask it.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and, maybe I don't have all the information. I'm like, for today, we're going to change I'm going to completely change it. Like, if squatting is aggravating their knee that day because of some hike they went on over the weekend, you ain't squatting today, buddy. We're gonna change up. And then a lot of people will legitimately ask me, they're like, hey, is this one of those things where I just need to push through it? And again, I'm always like, no, there's never a thing you need to like push through. Right. Like, it's not, unless it's like, you mentally don't want to work out today.
Exactly,
well, you can't give yourself that excuse every day. But I mean, if it's like, I know that the answer is deeper than that. Yeah. Like, where are we going with this alignment and take care of your body? And that's showing up because blank.
Well, and I appreciate that you bring that up, because I know that in the past you've actually sent people to me that you weren't sure about. It's always about who's the right professional to assess the situation. If something looks fishy, I had another patient yesterday where I pulled up her MRI, and I'm by no means do I read MRIs on a regular basis. But even myself, I could tell, because I look at x-rays all the time. That's what I focus on. So I'm trained to look at MRIs. I just don't do it often enough to say exactly what I think is the problem. I pulled up this woman's MRI, and I saw something on there that didn't belong there. Didn't look like it needed to be there. And I just brought it up. I said, did anyone talk to you about this? She said, yeah, the doctor said everything was fine with my MRIs. It looked okay. And I said, do you have the report by any chance? And so she went into her chart and she pulled up the report, and there was this giant white spot, just giant thing in her pelvis. And I'm like, this is not normal. I can tell it's not normal. We need to figure out what this is and see if she needs a second opinion. So she pulled up the report and sent it over to me, and I read through it, and it said, the report said she had a mass in her pelvis, and it ended up being a cyst, but still the doctor failed to read the report, didn't give her the details she needed. At the end of that visit, she thanked me profusely because I took the detail and the time necessary to really look through her case and give her the right recommendations. So sometimes people don't fit the bill on what's a clean cut issue. Like I said, you can have people with back pain or even leg pain. That's pretty simple. I mean, sciatic pain is a pretty simple problem that a lot of people suffer with. But then you could also have the signs and symptoms of something more serious that needs more help. Unless we do the right testing and the right exams, we don't know. So that's usually what I default to is if someone seems a little bit fishy in their response to whatever workout, send them out and get some testing. Get some x-rays at least first and get them in front of a professional who knows what they're looking at.
I totally agree with that. Like finding the right person. I don't think there's like a jack of all trades.
Right.
And I definitely am not against medical doctors or medication
Neither
or stuff like.
Absolutely not.
But like the person will compare it, right? Like do not come see me if you need surgery.
Right.
Like I could gladly practice a procedure on you, but it's not going to go well.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know how to diagnose the flu. Like, you get what I'm saying?
Right.
And you'll run into that often. You'll be like what you talked about. Oh, I didn't catch this person was. So like a MD's job is, are you sick or not?
Right.
Right. And then somebody will come to me and they'll say something like, I went running a whole bunch over the weekend and the bottom of my foot hurts. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, did you stretch after that? They're like, no, I was just going to go make an orthopedic appointment. I'm like,
right.
Or like, they'll be like, my hands cramp. I'm like, do you type on a computer all day? Do you ever stretch your fingers? Like, just like that simple. And they're like, no, I need to go. I need surgery.
Did you unplug the computer and plug it back in first?
Yeah. And it seems like such a simple fix, but if you just go see the professional in that area rather than, so like, don't see me to adjust your spine.
And in all fairness, I think it's hard to make that call. I think a lot of people look to you, Mitchell, because you're very outspoken, obviously very passionate about what you do, and you're about health. And sometimes people will ask me questions that I'm unqualified for as well, too. The key is, do we know the difference? Do we know enough about that to be able to say, hey, this is outside of my scope or not? I see no problem with attempting to do something on your own first, unless you have like, oh, I can't lift my leg. Or moving my hand I can't move my hand. That's a pretty bit serious problem. Maybe you need to go to the ER for that first. Things like that just way out of left field. But a person who has a pain problem that seems like a tight muscle, especially if they touch around that muscle and it feels sore, no problem. Try stretching it out a little bit and see if that helps.
What's the most common thing that you get that was a lead up to that was a lead up to something not known as a problem? Like, for example, do you get a lot of people that just said, my arm's been going numb for a week, and you're like, well, actually it's this thing in your neck. Like,
yep. So arms going numb, most common issue that I see is something called thoracic outlet syndrome, where either, like we talked about, those deep neck flexors, pinching down on the muscle, the vein, artery, and nerve coming off the spine, could also be caused by a rib that's out of place too, both of which can be subsequently caused by alignment problems.
And I'm getting these alignment problems through what? Like how I move, how I stand, or not move or stand.
Correct. And oftentimes people have injuries that they kind of blew off. Like if you've ever had a car accident before and you just said, yeah, I got rear-ended, I felt a little bit sore for a couple of days and didn't think anything of it, felt better and walked away. What people don't realize is that there's an inflammatory phase of every injury. The inflammation is the tissue response to healing. So if you tear a muscle, for example, and we all experience inflammation even with our exercise program because we're doing micro tears to the muscle fiber, and as it grows, it heals. That soreness is the result of a small subacute version of inflammation. When a person has an injury to their body, though, there's a scar tissue that forms. So the example analogy I like to use about inflammation is like, think of molten lava. When it first comes out of a volcano, it's hot, it's red, it burns. When it cools down, what does it turn into?
Hard rock.
Molten ash. Yeah, this hard rock. So if you think about an inflammatory problem or condition that's going to cause scar tissue, like with a tissue tendinous rupture, even tendinitis, for example, that's inflammatory too, that tendon is never going to work the same way unless you do the right rehab, unless you do the right prehab even to make sure your muscles are pliable and everything too. So you had asked me before about what does prevention mean? Like what's the best way to be preventative in care? And really the best way, first of all, if we're going to talk about key takeaways here, you got to know your body. You got to know how it functions and moves. Have you ever really taken your body through a full range of motion to see where muscles are really tight? You ever tried to bend over and touch your toes before? Do you feel it in your hamstrings or do you feel it in your low back? Things like this, like you got to really be listening to your body and paying attention. The next thing is, if you do have a pain problem, are you ignoring the pain problem or are you doing something about it? If the pain problem seems to be getting better with time, then you might be okay if you're treating it the right way. But I would never really just rely on just the pain problem itself. Because as I said, if that molten lava turns into hard rock, then you're dealing with a mobility issue later, which could set you up for future injuries later down the line. So really this all comes down to how do you get to know your body in the best manner, the best way, shape, or form? From a chiropractic perspective, I think everybody should have a spinal exam. No matter whether you're healthy or you're in pain, at least get pictures of your spine so you know. Then you can make good informed decisions about your health because, like I said, most of these conditions, most of these problems that people have come from alignment problems in the spine that they didn't know about.
Yeah, because that can hang on I know you said car accident, but even moving, you'll see people that I broke my foot real bad. I've broken a bunch of stuff, but I broke my foot real bad. And I didn't walk for 2.5 months. And that was a real weird transition back into walking. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually really thankful that I did it when I was 14 and not now, because I've had 20 years or whatever to regroup and learn how to walk and structure and all that kind of stuff. But
right.
When you stub your toe and you immediately limp, your body is protecting itself.
Exactly.
And it's immediately just trying to say, how can I use these other muscles? So even though you had this car wreck, some muscles will shut down.
Yep.
And then the other muscles will start working to overcompensate for those. And then those little muscles can't take that load, so they get uncomfortable. And it's almost is like stepping on a sheet of ice.
Yep.
And when you step on ice, how come some muscles contract, but not all of them?
Right. And you want your muscles contracting evenly. And that often doesn't happen. When you say muscle shuts down too, the other thing that comes to mind too is if something, slip or fall, car accident, whatever it was, misaligned your spine, and that misalignment is putting even the remotest amount of pressure on that nerve there, that could be shutting down the function of the muscle too. It's not always a tight versus weak muscle. There could be other issues to look at too, especially when we look at nerves.
So what did you say? You said this in the beginning of the show, but if you're doing a movement and you said it's still challenging, how's that a symptom? What do you mean by that? I'm asking it kind of weird. I can't remember exactly the words, but it was.
So there's some key characteristics about a movement. Let's just say the squat. Can we say the squat, for example?
Yeah.
Because the squat's a fundamental move that I think everybody should be able to do. Body weight squat, whether you have a barbell on your back or not. If that squat is difficult for you to get into, for example, like a third world squat. So third world squat is if you were just hanging out, sitting on your ankles, basically. I would demonstrate it, but I can't get up on the table here. So, if you have difficulty getting into those moves and you feel tightness or pulling or pinching or tension or anything in a place where you probably shouldn't, because a squat is something you should be able to do pain-free, tension-free. And if you feel tension in a certain area, it may not be pain, but it may be making you limited. Or and the other thing about a third world squat or a squat in general, you should be able to do a deep squat with your heel on the ground. So if you're the type of individual who has to squat and the heel comes up off the ground, that's an indicator of what's the word? Calves?
Yeah.
I was thinking all the muscles of the legs.
You were working your way down.
So things like that, and if you're not sure what that looks like, if you're not sure what the movement then you should ask a professional. You should ask someone who knows.
And then I want to be able to do that. like really well.
So if you're wanting to get better at your squat, then you got to get an assessment to find out what the alignment is, what the muscle balances are. Sometimes when people squat, and this is a good thing to look at, does your butt wink? Does it go?
Yep.
Does it wink up or down? Does it shift left or right? Do your knees cave in or cave out? It's not always a simple answer to get someone to squat properly. And especially and I know you had this experience as a coach where you're like, okay, this is how you squat properly. And the person does it and they still do it wrong. And you're like, are you even trying? And a lot of times people are, but their bodies just aren't prepared for that movement. They're not for whatever reason.
100%. And our coaches are very trained in verbal, visual, and tactile cues, because just because you show somebody something, they're going to try to emulate it exactly how you showed it. And you're going to be like, oh, they just don't understand it. No, they don't. Right. They just don't understand watching you. Exactly. How about you go, give them a visual cue or give them a tactile cue where you actually have to put them in the right position. Right. But yeah, that movement is key. Even there's a good saying that, like, you don't want to add function to dysfunction. Right. And it's like, okay, I'm going to squat. It's terrible. The position's atrocious. Yep. But look at me. I went all the way down. I went back up. And you're like, now you're about to break yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. You're just operating outside of that, just outside of that threshold of injury. So, it's a really great conversation we're having, Mitchell. I'm really grateful and thankful to be on this podcast. I hope you guys get a lot out of this. And of course, every time I'm around the gym, if you ever have questions, you want to talk to me, please, I'm super approachable. Don't ever be intimidated by that. If you're just like, hey, I've been having this issue, can you maybe look at my squat? I'm more than happy to do that while you're in the office or in the gym here. Yeah. And then if I see something that needs a quick stretch or something like that, I'll offer that to you. If I see something that maybe needs more than that, I'll tell you that too.
And you're the corrective chiropractics. You're the same guys that come to like our event, set up tables and stuff. Like we don't have like 20 different chiropractors that come to all of our. It's you guys, and I think you guys do a great job. And a lot of our members have gone and seen you guys, either got on a plane or got an assessment or done some type of rehab or all kinds of stuff. You guys offer a lot more, like I jokingly said in the beginning, than just neck cracking.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean, it's pretty through and through.
I think the reason for that is, and I think everybody can say this, one of the reasons why StrongSide is now open in Roswell and you guys are growing like wildfire, the people who are most passionate about what they do and they're really in it to win it and really in it to help people, you can tell. And you want to be around those people and you want to work with those people, and they make you interested in them because they're interested in you. And they want to see you get better, and they want you to be the best version of yourself. And I don't know if we mentioned this during the podcast or the preamble, but, we both both of us, you and I, had gone through some pretty significant trauma in our youth that influenced us in such an incredible way that now we don't want others to suffer the same way we do.
Never.
We want others to experience a life that's more fruitful, that's amazing, and the very best that they can be, just because we're fired up about it. We're motivated.
Yeah, you can feel it. Like, you're like, my back was terrible when I was 18. I know what you're feeling. Like, why does anybody's back have to feel that way?
Right.
Just take care of yourself.
Exactly.
But, hey, thanks for coming on. I know you got a patient you got to run to, but that whole conversation, I hope people got out of that, like, alignment and structure and just how much – I don't think people know how good they're supposed to feel.
They really don't.
And it's just, I'm going to tolerate pain and discomfort. Like, this is the last question I'll ask you, is I get this a lot, is people will blanket statement, you mentioned being 40 earlier. They'll be like, I'm 40, it's all downhill. And my first thought is, well, wait a minute. It's not, I'm 32, so I'm only 8 years away from death. Is that what you're telling me? Like, it's going to be that bad? Is it that you're...
It's okay, Mitchell. It's not that bad, I'll tell you.
Oh, great.
I'm here. You're all right.
And I'm like, okay, is it that you're 40 or 50 or whatever the thing is? Or it's just time.
Yes.
You haven't stretched in 30 years.
Yes.
You haven't ever developed a really good squat. Mm-hmm. You never got your spine assessed. And your body just can't take that beating for 50 years.
Yes, and I love that you brought that up, because everybody at every age group can show improvement. It doesn't matter. Like, people say, what age groups do you see? I see everybody. I mean, anybody who's got a spine that wants to stay healthy and keep their spine in good alignment. It's just like this. Like, if you want to race in the Indy 500, Are you going to take your car that's beat up that you've never done an oil change with? Or are you going to actually take care of the vehicle to a T? I mean, like last minute checks and everything, fresh brakes, fresh oil, fresh everything. Of course, if you want to be competitive, you want the very best of everything. And so I think a lot of people have just expected their health to kind of be there. And then when they lose it, they're like, oh, nuts. It's because I got this old. And I'm like, no, this is because you went 40 years without an oil change. Like let's get serious now. Now, and I don't ever want to make anybody feel bad, right? Like if you were that person and you've decided now I'm ready to make a change with my life, there is hope for you. And that's what's amazing about it. 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. I mean, some of our athletes here that we've competed with are in their 70s. And I'm like, I cannot believe some of the things that I'm seeing from these people. So you just want to think about your health in the sense that if I'm not proactive now, what is it going to look like 30 or 40 years from now? If you're not thinking those things right now, if you're not asking yourself those questions, like if you have an arthritic condition now, it's going to get worse unless you do something about it. If you have a problem with your health and you're not doing anything about it now, start now because it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And if it gets worse, then what are you going to do if it's permanent, right? Like, then that's where people are living in regret. And that's the last thing I would ever wish on anybody is in the end stage of their life, wishing they did something different when they had the chance to. Don't live in regret.
Boom. That is the perfect end to that podcast. That's right awesome. There. Where
Love you guys.
Can people follow you like on Instagram or where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, Andrew_St. Bernard on Instagram. I have some record deadlifts that I posted on there that I was super pumped about sharing with everybody. I set a goal. I wanted to do 500 pounds. I did 501.
Jeez Louise.
It finally got there. So very proud to share that with the world. Corrective Chiropractic or Woodstock Corrective Chiro is the Instagram for our office. But yeah, like I said, we're very easy to find. If you just do correctivechiropractic.com, you can see any of our offices. We're located in Decatur, Buckhead, Sandy Springs. We have multiple locations outside of here too, Johns Creek, so cool. Outside of Atlanta. And all of our doctors, I think one of the things you'll notice with Corrective Chiropractic is we're all very passionate about chiropractic and people and helping people do well. And we all love fitness and exercise. Like all of us take care of ourselves. We all exercise regularly. And we practice what we preach. It works.
Cool, man. Well, check it out. Thank you guys for listening. Drop us that 5 stars so you can come get your free snack. And let's rock and roll. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Love you, man.
Love you.